Well, Kyle,
Yes, Garrett.
are you ready for roommate lore?
I'm so ready for today because I've seen Spirit Within at least 20 times.
Why?
Well, because it was a Final Fantasy movie. It's like the only Final Fantasy thing I actually know.
All life is born of Gaia, and each life has a spirit.
And now Gaia's here. Finally, we have justified the Final Fantasy movie. Spirits Within, officially canon. We made it, everybody.
I remember being
Welcome.
very excited for that movie, and then I remember watching it and being the most bored I think I'd ever been by a movie at that time.
I thought it was solid. It was ghosts versus space marines. Like, what's not to love except for the very boring middle part and most of it?
Because Final Fantasy can be anything. It reinvents itself with every version of itself. Can you tell? People have been coming for me in the comments of videos about Final Fantasy 16.
The game that isn't a real Final Fantasy, but you need to play all the other ones, but it's ugly, but it's beautiful or something. Whatever.
Well, let's talk about a beautiful story told inside a beautiful raid, because we have now completed all of the Eden raids from Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. Kyle, we've been doing this as we go along. We do all of the non-required MSQ content in the expansion as we're currently going through that expansion, which is why it takes us a little longer than most to get through each expansion. And I gotta say, man, having done every raid essentially in order along the way as I'm playing each expansion, Eden is by far my favorite narrative of any raid we've done. And I'm even including, yes, Coils of Bahamut. I love Coils of Bahamut. It's required reading, go play it, but I like Eden more.
It's messy. It's old, it's messy, it's weird, the turns, the yalms. It's a artifact of its time. Alexander is also messy. Omega starts to get there.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. I'm not the biggest Alexander narrative fan. It doesn't really do anything for me. Evil straight up lost me.
That's an alliance raid, though.
You're right, that is an alliance raid. And alliance raids don't matter, they're made up. So you're in the same boat. Is this your favorite raid story so far?
Raid story, yes, but I think the rest of them have all been kind of their own design. Omega was really fun, but it was super weird. And it wasn't directly tied in like I expect Omega the robot that fought Shinryu at the end of Heaven's Ward to be the big climax that I expected. Instead, it was a wonderful fart off with Coffee and Nero and Sid and all that, and I very much enjoyed it. But this was directly related to the world of the first. And there was the question posed by the end of Shadowbringers. What's going to happen to this world when we leave? And that question continued to percolate as we got through 5.3 and the early bits of Eden. And to have it fully transformed to Reen and Gaia's story by the end was a very strong choice, because now we have personalities on the first that are fully established rather than being in just Scion tag-along town.
You know, I said the same thing about Coils of Bahamut. Feels like forever ago now when we got carried through that, which was that it feels like required reading. This is such a massive fill-in of a chunk of lore that I think is really important to the story of Final Fantasy XIV, and I feel the same way about Eden. I cannot imagine loving Shadowbringers as much as it seems like most players of this game love Shadowbringers, and skipping Eden. It is such a beautiful and meaty lore chunk. It cements facts about Shadowbringers, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And then on top of it, as someone who I've said time and time again, I'm not as interested in like the lore of magic and ether and stuff that's in this game. What I really resonate with Final Fantasy XIV is the character moments, and there are some truly awesome, heartwarming, and wholesome character moments in Eden. So let's get into it. We got to go all the way back to the end of 5.0, because that's when this all starts. We have a little stinger in our warning. This is going to be a long set of cutscenes moment at the end of 5.0 Shadowbringers. Thancred and Reen walking out into the empty. We get it paid off very directly as we begin Eden, because we find out what they found out in the empty. Apparently, the first Sin Eater, which they're calling Eden, which for some reason looks like a giant spaceship crash landed in the desert.
At that phase, yes, it is very UFO-y in that regard. Once it gets up and starts moving around, it's extremely Razafon, with all the faces and multi-breasts going on in the Dino Bulge.
There's a lot of multi-breast going on in Eden.
It's true. Well, yeah, there's like a fertility thing going on. You got the name Gaia going around.
Eden?
Yeah.
The Garden of, possibly. Trying to turn Eden into a garden. Symbolism, Kyle. Symbolism.
It gets going. I like the idea of just a terrible, terrible desert where you can turn into a monster if you hang out too long. That's just a good idea.
However, Urianger gets drawn into the mix. The Warrior of Light, us the player, gets drawn into the mix. And the four of us set about trying to use Eden to restore the ethereal balance of the empty and bring life back to this massive barren wasteland.
Yeah, well, Regan was Minfilia for a time, and she believes she can control the giant beast there in the empty.
It's where this imbalance of light began, or reached its crescendo, essentially, right? And Reen has really mastered control over the light element.
This is all super duper cute, and a great excuse to just have Tour of Primals. Tour of Primals, everybody. Let's redo the graphics. Let's have some fun with our memories.
Fighting some primals, right? But also security constructs and eventually a swarm of Sin Eater stingrays.
We start with a rather interesting battle versus the Keeper of Knowledge, Eden Prime. The thing you're inside, you fight it first, and it shoots a laser, a quasar.
I love that you start fighting Eden Prime and you're just like, wait a minute, we're not ending with this? And so it just made my brain go, oh, what do you have to show me? Because if this is how you're starting, this must go a direction I wasn't expecting. And spoiler alert, it did. But while we get into the primals and whatnot, what really sets the story off, it's the second encounter with the enemy known as Voidwalker that attacks. And when we end up defeating it, leaves a strange girl behind that we later learn is Gaia.
Like a void sent wielding an action figure? It's a really weird first chapter.
There's a lot of mounts in game that carry people like this.
It could be a weird game at times.
You don't say.
And that experience cues Urianger in to start killing primals and using that Unleash of Ether from a primal summoning, but it's summoned through Eden, so it's not a simulation, but it's like a manifestation. And he can heal the empty by slowly putting elements into it. So our first up is Leviathan. We get to redo Leviathan, which is cute. He's got two heads, and you fought the tail and the head at the same time. So, you can kind of put together why and how it got warped into a two-headed beast.
It's super cool. And then we fight Titan, who for some reason is also a car.
I think it's an excellent update. I don't mind like the more Oni-esque Goron-like Titan. I think it's kind of cool. I love his music. But how many years later are we? 9? Yeah, about 9 years later. I think this is a cooler model. I think it's worth the update.
I agree. The OG Realm Reborn Titan, now my least favorite version of Titan, and I'm including the version I just saw in Final Fantasy 16. Sorry.
Oh, that one's cool.
It's
like
real
that
cool
one too.
looking. Yeah, it's like, what if Attack on Titan had good designs?
I'm ignoring that. If this is like if it was a Transformer or something along those lines.
I love this concession. I love having an excuse to revisit primals, and also maybe that the Warrior of Light has had a concussion or two in their time, because our memory may not be as good as we think it is.
you can have that headcanon if you want. Enjoy that headcanon, I guess. It's Eden's construct. It's the one messing with things. Leviathan, I'm kind of on board for like maybe you got a little confused pipeline. But by the time of Car Titan, I'm off that wagon. I don't think that's the case at all. I think Eden just had better graphics than A Realm Reborn had at the end of the day.
Eden's just having fun with it. Eden's just stunting on us. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I liked it well enough. I don't think the lore really pops off in this first wing of Eden, but I was very excited to revisit some of the primals.
It popped off in a Final Fantasy 14 only player kind of way because I know that knowledge. I get that reference. I'm excited. I know primals.
It was nice for me as someone who didn't grow up in Final Fantasy to like get the references because it's within the game I've already been playing. So I really enjoyed that. But I really loved what was to come. But before we go, let me just back up here a minute. Camera limitations. Kyle, did you notice my shirt today?
I did.
But you may remember a time before we were called Grinding Gear where Kyle made me talk about Final Fantasy XIV and the trend of people jumping ship over to it. And I may not have been as enthusiastic about it as I am now. I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm sure as shit not playing Final Fantasy. Well, we have immortalized that quote in shirt form. So you can get your I'm sure as shit not playing Final Fantasy t-shirt right now over on the Grinding Gear store, which you can get to by going to buyOurBromance.com. That is buyOurBromance.com. So we get to part 2 of Eden and we properly meet Gaia out of her armor, designed by, I don't know the names of designers, but I know this guy worked on 10, and I was not surprised at all to find out that the same person designed Lulu from Final Fantasy X.
I mean, anyone could have designed a goth girl, but the fact that he did it twice is a little suspect. Useless neckerchiefs aside, big sweater combos. Maybe that belt is, the belt's like supporting the sweater. Don't think about it too much. Heels in the desert, get tiring. Thancred's carrying the luggage. Oriange, before we left Eden's Gate, said that he believed this to be the Oracle of Darkness. Oracle of Darkness, Rena's the Oracle of Light, was anyway. So we have a counteracting force here, and Reen's happy-go-lucky attitude next to Goth Girl's pessimism is an exchange and an energy that is motivating this as the two dads are about to peace out at the end.
It is a classic pairing, archetype, trope, whatever you want to call it, that I will never get sick of.
The odd couple. Yep, one's messy, one's clean.
I was not in love with the new Wednesday series, but I did love her whole dynamic with her roommate.
She's been smothering me with hospitality. I hope to return the favor. In her sleep.
Oh God, are they not roommates either?
Oh.
We start to get to know Gaia. I internalize her unvoiced dialogue as Daria, and she gets lost in the desert. We see a glimpse of what we now know are her Ascian powers.
Hot topic powers.
There's even a moment a little bit later on where Reen straight up says, as unlikely I think it is that she's an Ascian, and I'm like, oh my God, this early in part 2, Reen's just giving us the answer and dismissing it.
Yeah, there's also that part where when we first defeated action figure Gaia, that Reen said she sensed something like Emmett on her, which is an interesting line given that Emmett is such a celebrated character. Here we are invoking him when everybody wants more of him. It definitely drew the eye.
Anyone who gets this custom of a character, I'm assuming you're important. You're going to have a pretty massive lore arc.
I'm with you. It's the Scooby-Doo bookcase problem, right? You can see what's animated in the backdrop, and you know that at some point someone's going to interact with the book for the secret door, right?
I don't think they gave away the goose that she's an Ascian, but it definitely, like, there was going to be some big reveal. I didn't know what form it was going to take. I was surprised. I thought it was great. More on that when we get to it. During all of this, we learned, like, blink and you miss it, that the voice in Gaia's head that she's referring to as, like, a fairy, like, whispering to her, we now know it's Metron. But we learned that Metron, this at the time, this voice in her head was the one that informed her name is Gaia, because we're dealing with a case of amnesia with Gaia, and she doesn't know what her name was back when she was in Yulmore, apparently. But this voice whispered to her, hey, your name is Gaia. Which already, Kyle, I want to take our first lore bomb break of this discussion, of which there will be at least 2 more.
Okay.
Because it means the real name of Ascians that we now know are all torn from Greek mythology. Metron's going around as Metron, but we find out later on that his true name, back when he was a fully formed Amoritine, was Artemis. Logrief, who is Gaia, Logrief's real true name as an Amoritine was Gaia, and we already knew that Emmett's real name was Hades. So all this is ripped from Greek mythology. Take from that what you will. I don't read as much into this as everybody, but it's pretty hard to avoid in the Eden raid, especially with the very final fight and the visuals that they decide to pull from.
From the outside, it is a very Final Fantasy thing to do. I assume production just keeps moving. Take your inspiration. Don't rename the inspiration. Let's keep moving. I'm fine with it.
We start to get a nice glimpse of the budding relationship between Reen and Gaia as Reen starts to extol the virtues of coffee biscuits.
Coffee biscuits, yeah.
This is where that all begins. But we don't have time for that because we need to get to bringing back lightning, wind, and fire to the empty. We succeed after fighting visions of Rama, Garuda, and Ifrit, the latter two unfortunately being merged into a single encounter. I was very bummed about this. Garuda being my favorite primal. I didn't like her having to share the limelight with Ifrit.
It's a cute idea. You got to get lightning, and then, oh no, we need fire to evaporate the water we made, and we need wind to form the clouds, so we got to do both at the same time. Neat idea. Neat idea. It meant both were a little small. I thought the models were okay. It was more that they were both kind of small and lost the presence of Garuda Ifrit.
You had a fairly ingenious take that might ruffle some feathers on the stream, but you said they look like mobile game version of themselves, which I thought was hilarious.
That is true.
They were cleaner, sleeker. The cool toys are all like 8+. These were toys for like 3 to 5.
You had your G.I. Joes at Toys R Us, and this was Action Force at Walgreens.
I'm trying to give you an out to where this doesn't sound like you're being overly judgmental.
I could be disappointed. These are finally references I understand. I'm sure people complained about the look of Hades or something like that back in the day. Let me have my moment.
But then the voice of the fairy that we know as Metron calls in a Sin Eater attack, like a flock of small stingray-ass looking Sin Eaters. And we go up to like the roof of Eden. It's weird to think of being inside a Sin Eater. I really struggle thinking of Eden as a biological entity that we're also piloting like a spaceship.
Yeah, it never goes into like the Fantastic Voyage kind of ideas where we have to fight the white blood cells and we have to go through the piping and the intestines or whatever. There's nothing at that.
No, they don't magic school bus this shit.
Reen summons forth, is able to materialize a platform on top for us to fight the swarm in one of the more creative MMO fights I've ever seen. To a point where we didn't even meta-knowledge this. Like the idea of stingrays and portals and blasting around based on portal tech was completely beyond us in the moment. It took us multiple tries to figure this out.
Oh, God, yeah. We got absolutely freaking owned. But then at the end of this, Gaia is lost in a void. We never truly explore where she is. On the outside, she's just unconscious, but we see on the inside she's just trapped in this dark void. But Reen's voice brings her back.
Yeah, we have a moment too with Oriange where he suggests, much like we hear Heidelin, perhaps the fairy is Zodiark, which would have been a badass band-aid to rip off here.
The truth of it is also still very cool, but maybe not quite as operatic. We get Gaia back, and Oriange's like, we need to bring ice back. And I sit there and go, we already have water and wind. Why the hell is ice a separate? But it doesn't matter. It's all, we want to see Shiva, Kyle. We want to bring Shiva back. We want to fight Shiva again. And Reen volunteers as tribute.
For those in the poster class, light is closest to ice. So Reen being, light, Oracle of Light kind of business, feels like she'll have a better chance to control Shiva because of their relationship, and kind of helps clarify why the Wave of Light looks like a big ice thing, because it kind of is.
I hadn't thought. I mean, if it's a flood, you're already talking about water and how would you stop water? You would freeze it.
Yeah, the flood, yeah.
It's that, or you're the oracle of being a beaver and you conjure a giant dam. I don't think that's what she's going to do.
The Wood Oracle. But one thing cool about this particular beat is we lose. Like, we straight up lose. And if it wasn't for Gaia and her hammer, Warrior of Light was defeated forever by Reen.
Channeling the power of Shiva. My brain stumbles with this one. So Reen becoming a primal, more powerful than a warrior of light, which makes her more powerful than everyone we've defeated up to this point.
But also enhanced by Eden. See, this is where I argue with like the warrior of light's misinterpreting the past. Like, Eden's having a heavy influence here. And that's the whole point of Eden, is that it was reaching across the first to make sure Gaia had no friends growing up, because Mitron didn't want her to have any friends or anybody else in her life. And you see the influence of Mitron on Shiva Reen and her ability to control what she's summoned.
Yeah, the influence of Mitron, which is the influence of Eden, which is the influence of a Sin Eater, they're all the same entity at this point in time. Nonetheless, with the help of Gaia, we're successful, and grass begins to grow in the empty. We finally get to see some green return to the barren wasteland. A little shard of Shiva ice remains, and Reen wants to make a nice little necklace from it. We end part 2 of Eden with Thancred and Oriange having a pretty heavy talk with the Warrior of Light and Reen, because they realize they need to stop helping with Eden because they're not going to be able to see it through because they're about to leave the first.
Yeah, they're about to check out.
Which makes sense when you think about what patch part 2 dropped with and how that lines up with the linear story of the MSQ. Part 3 of Eden to set the stage. The Scions are back in the first, but we need to go back to Eden because the job's not done yet. The ethereal balance has not been restored. But first, Gaia's really eager to show off the fact that she has her learner's permit.
I mean, who isn't, right? I mean, who isn't excited to drive at the age of 16, right? Hell yeah.
So along the way, while we're doing the Sky Slipper, the Slippy the Toad, I forget what this thing's always called,
Sky
but
Slipper,
we're driving along in Mr. Toad's Luke Skywalker jalopy.
Very Star Wars.
And but also weirdly like circular, almost like a Dragon Ball, like Toriyama style.
We've had a lot of advancements in animation too, and Gaia's hair is doing its best.
Oh, buddy, Gaia's hair.
Doing its best.
Oh, buddy, Gaia's hair. Oh, man. I don't know what product, Gaia, you're using on your bangs, but it's too much. As they're sky slipping along, we start to get hints that Gaia is losing more of her memory as she just starts forgetting about the festival as we're talking about it.
Reen and Gaia have had their coffee biscuit date, but they arrive at the empty, now responsible, now on their own young adult novel journey. And this
really does have a lot of YA energy, and I like YA books. And some of my favorite new Star Wars canon are very like super YA energy books.
They're not as stumbly as some young adult novels are, but they are without the adults now. They are on their own, and they are making mistakes. We don't have time to make a lot of mistakes because it's the final chapter, but things are a little messy. In particular, I love that they're thinking about, if we need some dark energy, are there any dark primals we know? Could we summon Zodiark? Would that work out? No, that is not okay, kids. That is not a good idea.
I love the thought experiment during all of this, right? Because Eden, it's like getting worse in the time that they've been gone. And so when they come back, Gaia suggests maybe the light aspect, it's just still too strong. Why don't we just try countering it with darkness? So we need to summon some sort of vision of darkness, but there isn't a darkness primal. There isn't one. And like you said, they bring up Zodiac. It's like, no, we don't want to do that. That's no. Let's not think that. Very Ghostbusters energy. Like, just don't think about anything because it's going to appear and try and kick our ass. But we decide to go with Cloud of Darkness, which looks very different when we go to do this fight compared to what you experience when you go do Crystal Tower Raid.
Yeah, that thing's just weird and big and weird.
So we fight the Cloud of Darkness again in much more revealing fashion that I guess is a reference to other Final Fantasy things that I don't know about. And then Mitron just kicks the door in and is like, yo, I heard y'all like Shadowbringers. You want to learn more about Shadowbringers?
It's a lot, is really what it comes down to.
It is time for lore interruption number 2 is what it comes down to, Kyle. The second lore interruption of this video, because this lore bomb from Metron, I found fascinating. I don't know about you, but
you like the character-driven lore, and this is very character-driven.
And I also just really like the Ascian lore. This is the candy shell that goes around all this ether lore that I am just like, get this out of here. This isn't what I'm here for. And they covered it in this candy coating that is Ascian goodness. And I'm just like, I want it.
I thought you didn't like Amnesia. I thought you don't like
I hate Amnesia, but if the story's good, I don't give a crap.
Okay.
I bend constantly. I would make a terrible politician. If something is done well, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. Do it well, I'll allow it. And it's totally fine. And they don't belabor the Amnesia thing. It's mentioned at the very beginning, and then at the end here, it's pulled back in for really sad and heartstring pulling effect. Also, because of the way that there's like straight up magic going on here where Metron's like, I'm going to destroy your memories. And we see a physical and actual representation of him just like breaking crystals of her memories. I'm like, this is all good. This is all super cool. This isn't just, weekday morning time soap operas where I have amnesia. I hit my head. No, we've got like a creepy being of darkness physically murdering someone's memories. And I'm super into that. Metron shows up, reveals himself as an Ascian, and informs us that he and Gaia were tasked by Emmett with triggering the rejoining on the first. I don't think he lets it slip in this exact moment that Gaia was an Ascian, but basically infers it. Invokes Emmett's Selk, so my ears perked up. And we find out exactly how Eden was created. And by virtue, we find out exactly how the Flood of Light happened, how Sin Eaters came to being. Like it all stems from this moment. And it comes down to when Ardbert and his band faced off against Metron, we later find out was also like Ascian primed with Gaia at the same time. He doesn't get that nitty gritty, but we do see like a sepia echo flashback of Ardbert and the warriors looking at Metron, and Metron is not in his Ascian prime form. He's just in his standard robed Ascian form, and that tracks with what Metron talks about here, because Metron says that when Ardbert struck him with his blade of light, it twisted and trapped him in an altered form, and that altered form was Eden, the first Sin Eater. And during all of this, then Metron unleashed the light inside himself, which created the wave that consumed the first. Like that is a lot. That is a lot of like hard lore. This is exactly what happened and how it happened. Here you go to consume in just a couple paragraphs.
And it's justification as to why another world might fall to certain calamities. But this one was so fast. This one was a wave of light. Where did that come from? It came from Metron. But
then on top of that, when Minfilia stopped the flood, Metron regained consciousness, but he could like only send whispers. So like when he became Eden, he became a Sin Eater, like really kind of ceased to be Metron or have any sense of self. It just became this first Sin Eater and just flooded the land. But then when that flood was paused by Minfilia, Metron started to get a little sense of self back. And they even go into the fact that over time, Metron grew stronger and was eventually able to exert his will over Gaia, which all of this makes sense because it's like been, roughly a century since the flood. So a decent chunk of time has passed with poor Metron hideously transformed into Eden, trying to get a sense of himself back and getting to work on it and get stronger and push the boundaries of this prison he finds himself in.
Well, in this step of Eden's promise, Metron's coming off like a pretty big creep. He's piqued Gaia's curiosity because he has answers about who she is, but first Metron wants to show us the past. And maybe this is an Amarat-like manifestation. Maybe he's using the Eden energies to project it, but he creates Litany, the Shadowkeeper. You fight the Shadowkeeper in their shadowy form?
This is totally shades of the meteor shower or our visions of Amarat to people in Yulmore. Like this is Ascian tactics straight from like the handbook that Emmett dishes out on orientation day. That is what Metron is doing here. Is I'm going to show you a vision of Gaia's past. Witness the fight against the Shadowkeeper Silva, because we did all of the role quests. So we got that payoff. We got the good ending. I loved all of this, dude. This is so in step, and there's so much little like lore nugget payoffs if you paid attention during Shadowbringers, or have a channel where you do long-winded dissertations about chapters of Final Fantasy XIV's MSQ along the way.
You had the shadow of the wolf that looked like an Elizin before it projected its attacks out of its own backside. Like, that was great.
I was already enjoying Eden. I really love the chemistry between Reen and Gaia. But when Metron kicks down the door is like, yo, more Ascian lore for that ass, I was like, yes, let's go.
And it is an interesting Twilight Zone-like scenario. We've seen this trope before. The most recent one I can remember is the Rick and Morty episode, where you are sent back in time to the point before you fell in love with somebody. You have your memories, they don't. And you struggle to convince them that you were once lovers across time and space.
I was thinking 51st Dates, but okay.
Not quite as Twilight Zone, but yes, the VHS they have to watch every morning. He's supposed to be creepy, and after the Shadow Keeper, just as you said, out of the Ascian playbook, you got to feed them a little bit of their past memories to awaken. We get into who Gaia is, reveals her mask as Logriff.
Another lore pause. Like, it's another big drop. It's like the Logriff Ascian lore drop.
Gaia is an Ascian reborn. Metron and Gaia joined forces to defeat the Warriors of Light, which was Ardbert's gang. At that fight, the Ascian Prime that they had formed out of love, or I think it seems necessity, to be powerful enough to enact Emmett's will, their Ascian Prime, their merge powers fell apart, Gaia was destroyed, and Metron was transformed into the first Sin Eater. Now, why did it take Gaia close to 100 years to reborn when Nabriellis did it instantly? Clearly, there's a difference between how Gaia was destroyed and Nabriellis was defeated.
Okay, now hold on here. Nabriellis is interesting because he's not Paragon. He is Sundered.
He is, and we learned that Gaia was found, a shard, and elevated back to Ascian.
Now, I haven't thought about any of this. I'm having a reaction in real time. Why is Gaia so young? I assumed like Gaia was just another unfound shard of Logriff that existed on the first. How does that work? How do shards of the Ascians work with mortals that are, what is she, 16? Like, did you have to be alive? Like, are you new life and you're a shard of the Ascian then? Or can you be a shard of an Ascian, a new life 100 years after the wave of light on the first?
What we know from this conversation is that Logriff, a shard of Logriff, one of the convocation of 14 seats, was found by Emmett, we can assume, who gave her back her memories, showing her star showers and what have you. Logriff gets with Metron. They start fulfilling Emmett's will on the first. They are defeated. There is some sort of reborn process that happens when you're defeated as an Ascian shard, and you re-enter the resurrection pool and are born as a baby anew in the world.
Are you born as a baby? I thought you just had to find another body to like hop into, because that's what's going on with Nabriellis. He's not showing up as a freaking kid.
Well, Nabriellis doesn't jump in a body. He reses himself right next to himself, because everyone in that room can see Ascians because they all have the echo. That's my question. What is the difference between defeated and res instantly, we can't kill them without white auracite, and destroyed to be lined up for rebornation as an Ascian?
I'm also like curious as to why Metron wasn't just killed by the Blade of Light and instead warped. Because we killed Emmett with a Blade of Light. Or did we? Is Emmett coming back? Is there still a chance, Kyle?
That's where we're kind of circling right now. There was the white auracite, which we knew from our time on the Source doing the experimental blasts on other Ascians. We did use white auracite on Emmett, but it was all chopped up by Thancred and kind of messy. It wasn't classic Nabriellis Igiorm destruction.
Okay.
So there is a lot of nebulousness left. My theory is why the writers would do this here towards the end of our Shadowbringers chapters is they want to start Ascian apocalypse for Endwalker. We're just going to be completely swarm lousy with Ascians all getting resurrected with no idea who they are. It's going to be amnesia hell, Garrett.
Oh no.
We're going to meet La Habrea again. We're just going to line them all up, but they're not going to know who they are. Now, would they res as little kids? I don't know about that.
Metron not just dying and Gaia being a child hurts my brain, and I don't know what to make of it.
I think it's supposed to hurt your brain right now. This is setting up additional Ascian functionalities for Endwalker. Hi, I'm sitting here editing this thing, and I think I just figured this all out. Nabrialis was riding a body when he showed up at the Waking Sands because he's a coward. Riding a body gets you a get-out-of-jail-free card if you were to die. And Logriff is a child, or was a child, grew up from a child, because all Ascians have been rezzed from shards which had to have been born. They have to be born and found by other Ascian. Okay, back to the video.
Even with all that, there's more just stamped in stone, carved in stone lore here that like Logriff and Metron both were members of the Convocation of 14. As a matter of fact, Logriff was supposed to be the original Heart of Zodiark before that passed to Elidibus.
So we got the answer there for why the heart changed out at that time. We have now met another member of the Convocation.
Two more. Both Metron and Logriff were both members of the 14. Also, as creepy as Metron is during all of this, we do find out that it seems like at least one point in their lives, Logriff and Metron were in love.
He's obviously a creeper, but...
Oh, yeah, no, it's a classic case of cold motive, still murder. Like,
yeah.
He's an absolute creep, but it does add an air of extra tragedy to this. Like, I think often, there was a George R. R. Martin quote around the death of Joffrey, where he's like, yeah, this character's horrible, but I'm still going to make you sit there and experience his mother being sad about his death. It's still a mom losing a child at the end of the day, no matter how evil that child may be.
He poses a literal take on utopia. He wants to destroy the world so they can be together forever. He wants to create a perfect sphere where nothing can interrupt their love. I mean, that's romantic in an evil way. It's kind of cute. In an awful way, it's kind of sweet.
It's really good villain writing. It's really good villain writing. It's dark, it's twisted, but there is a grain of something relatable, of true sadness that you can still grab onto, to where he's not just a cardboard cutout. I am villainous. I want my girlfriend back. There's a complication that elevates this character's motivations.
And we're echoing, LOL, the plight of Emmett and the other paragons of the source. We are making sure that you know, the audience, as we head towards Endwalker, that all Ascians are pretty into this. My love is real, yours is false. And however I perceive the world, whether it's friendship, love, the best city ever in Amarant, they will always believe and need convincing that your world is worth saving.
This whole raid is like the major themes of Shadowbringers remixed. It's awesome. I love it. And that, what you just mentioned, is another big reason why.
Speaking of remix, our next boss is literally the remix boss.
I mean, if you want to remix daddy issues, sure.
Exactly. We got Dread Hope Fatebringer, who's a combination of Thancred, Ranjit, and a Light Word. And there's not really any Vothri in here, but the Light Word and wings are kind of chilling back there.
Yeah, you got a little, biblical representation of an angel going on. Fun fight, creepy, didn't want to think about it too much.
And then Metron goes about deleting memories.
Oh God, yeah. If at any moment you were like, oh, they did used to be in love, I kind of feel for this guy. They immediately like you cut that right out. Guy's got to be stopped. Metron's going too far, and we head into the final fight, which, not a Greek mythology expert by any means, so like this crazy boss model didn't do a whole lot for me. It didn't trigger my brain. I didn't pay a lot of attention in history class, but I have already been on record on this channel as being absolutely in love with any boss fight that makes story beats and lore mechanics, and getting to journey through Gaia's memories as a major part of the fight mechanics. It is right up there with the Yatsuyu fight. I freaking loved this.
It is a dramatic journey through the memories that are being deleted and the boss's model itself. I was joking when I said, ooh, let's fight the guys in the knees, but we did. We actually fought the guys in the knees.
Yeah, we did. We fought the knee dudes. This was awesome. This is a truly epic capstone. Oh, and just a quick little aside. I was so mad that we didn't get to see the tea and biscuit date, but you get to see it if you go and do the fight. We still don't get to see the festival, though, and for that, I will never forgive.
The festival's coming up. It hasn't happened yet, so we could still make it back in time in some future side quest to see the festival.
I hope it turns out better than the Dwarf Festival before the Nier raid.
Less fire this time.
And bombs, yeah. Metron's defeated. It's pretty sad. We get that scene in the void with Gaia. And she seems like legitimately sad to kind of see him go at the end. Again, at making it Metron tragic. I think successfully so, even though clearly had to be put down.
And they state that Metron is off to be reborn. While we're still a little confused about our past Ascians, we know that Metron is now in the lineup for a more classic What Dreams May Come resurrection.
We get one of my favorite visual scenes ever, which I found out since, I guess, is a big, huge Final Fantasy VIII reference, like a shot-for-shot recreation of a scene in Final Fantasy VIII. But I didn't play Final Fantasy VIII, so this is all new to me, and I absolutely cannot get over the visual feast that is Reen cutting through Gaia's void with Thancred's gunblade. It's absolutely beautiful. It is the best transition I have seen in this game, full stop. The cutting through, the two of them almost touching hands, and then getting this beautiful reveal of Eden in all its lush, regrowth, new life glory.
And then we start our wrap up. Gaia is going to keep a diary, which could come back in the future as even a source of Ascian resurrection or memory insertion. And then we've got Gaia saying that they might go traveling around. I mean, after all, they are an Ascian. So they could visit the source if they figured out how to traverse the rift.
I mean, depending on your choice of dialogue, the Warrior of Light may canonically be the person that plants that idea in her head, being like, hey, Ascians can go wherever the hell they want. Why don't you? And I remember in the moment being like, boy, do we even know she can do that? And so I felt better when Guy was like, I don't even know if I can do that. I'm like, okay, cool. I was right to be like, is she even capable of doing that? But yeah, all of that's great. And we just end with really sweet moments between Reen and Gaia, like their friendship, their relationship reaching its end state, at least as far as we know it. Knowing Endwalker feels like a proper ending to everything that's happened in Final Fantasy XIV, essentially since 1.0. I would be surprised if we see Reen again until post Endwalker.
I don't see them doing Trouble in Paradise for the sake of elongating that story. It's in a really good place. The two are mirrors of each other now together. So why would they add trouble there? But I can see a world where Warrior of Light gets trapped in the void and Reen/Gaia come rescue you. I mean, Reen is basically, in a sense, and it's a little different because now she's split from Minfilia, but she was a light Ascian, so it would make sense if Reen also learns how to traverse the rift. Together, Reen and Gaia can go traverse around. They peace out like the end of Korra.
Interesting you should bring up the end of Korra. Dude, we absorb a lot of fan theories. And 9.99999 times out of 10, that's where they begin and end for me. Is, oh, what a cute fan theory. Every time we stream this, every time we were public and talking with folks in our community about it, Reen and Gaia as a relationship was everywhere. It was constant. And when it first started, because the roommate jokes were everywhere.
Oh my God, they were roommates.
By the end of this, is it subtle? Is it not confirmed beyond the shadow of a doubt? Not in my opinion, which is funny you bring up Korra because they did a very similar thing with Korra, which caused a bunch of drama. And the final season was like not shown actually on Nickelodeon. It pissed a lot of people off, and I don't like how it was handled because I love the ending of Korra. But this isn't where I'm going to go off on my Korra rant. This is the first fan theory I am bought and sold on. I am 100% in on. I did not internalize this any other way. I ended this rooting for their relationship so hard. It's so wholesome and reminded me of falling in love as a teenager. Big time. They really capture those awkward moments where you're trying to navigate each other's personalities. And as someone who is a bit of a sucker for romance, I really enjoyed it.
Who else are you going to relate to as the Oracle of Light? Like you were trapped underground in Yulemore for a long time. And here's someone who was trapped in Yulemore in their own head. You know, people being whispered to, but in a very much a prison of their mind outside of a physical prison like Green was in. Like, they mirror each other. So for them to go off to dates and pick out lipstick, it works.
As far as I'm concerned, that's canon. When we do eventually revisit these characters, I look forward to seeing how they decorated their apartment.